Shinobi Life 2, at its peak, was the biggest game on Roblox. It would consistently get hundreds of thousands of players, and the developers were updating the game weekly. But over time, the game would slowly lose popularity, and despite the efforts of the developers, the game would never reach its peak popularity ever again, and the developers would decide to push aside the game and work on bigger projects. This is the depressing downfall of Shinobi Life 2. The game released on September 25, 2020, and it would quickly gain popularity. The developers, Rell Games, were very well known in the Roblox Naruto community as a duo of brothers who have been making Naruto games on Roblox forever, and their sequel to Shinobi Life would prove to be their biggest game yet, and they definitely made sure to capitalize off it. Shinobi Life 2 would get weekly updates, and the consistent flow of content kept the game's fast-growing community engaged. The game would get new game modes, abilities, and just fun and new content. And life was good. Until not even 2 months after the game's release, it would get copyright striked and taken down by the creators of Naruto. The game would eventually return, rebranding to Shindo Life. But it wasn't the same. It lost its Naruto game touch, and a lot of players quit the game. But those who stayed continued to see the evolution of the game. Weekly updates continued, and the amount of content was growing exponentially. June 26, 2021. The first Shindo Life live event. This was a monumental feat from any Roblox game, and would mark the first of many live events for Shindo Life. The event was the first time the entire community was truly brought together, and it was something completely new from any Roblox game. Rell Games would continue doing these events after seeing the success of its first one, following up the first event with the Forged Ringoku event in August, and just a month later in September, the third live event would release. This was by far the biggest event out of the three, and would be the biggest player count Shindo Life had since the return of the game almost a year before. Although the third live event gave Shindo Life its biggest player spike in almost a year, it also kickstarted the beginning of the downfall of the game. The update added Shindo Ringoku and shifted the game's abilities towards a more high-damaging AoE type combat, instead of its previously more skill-based combat, and every new ability would follow this system, leading to heavy imbalances between the new abilities and the old abilities, and creating a never-ending cycle of trying to balance everything in the game. This was also around the time Rell Games made the decision to add abilities outside of Naruto, which had a mixed effect on the community. Some people wanted to keep Shindo Life as a Naruto game, and others really didn't care, but it was a factor as to why people were quitting. As time went on, Shindo Life would slowly lose players. Every update had a slightly lower spike in players, and people were losing interest. The updates started getting one-dimensional, and it was obvious players were getting sick of the same updates consisting of a few new abilities and weapons. People wanted something game-changing and brand new that added a whole new aspect to the game. But every time Rell Games would try to add something brand new, it would fall flat on its face, mainly due to the pressure of weekly updates, and having to cram brand new concepts into a week's span. A clear example of this is the Mentor update. On the surface, this update had infinite potential. Your mind is probably already thinking about how cool it would be to train under a teacher, and over time through trainings, you would learn hidden abilities and have to find the best mentor for your playstyle. But in reality, the update was extremely underwhelming. All mentors did was increase specific stats and give you a few perks when you choose your mentor. And trainings were the same repetitive quest, so there was no cool trainings to unlock abilities, and instead people just chose a mentor and didn't even do trainings as they were boring and repetitive. The developers eventually stopped weekly updates and would try to update bi-weekly, which is when the game really started to see a noticeable decrease in players. January 6, 2023, Rell Games would release a video on a brand new project, Ninden. This game would basically be the predecessor to Shindo Life, and from what we've seen, the game looks very promising. It's essentially your traditional RPG game, but it's Naruto, and it looks like the structure of the game will give Rell Games a lot of freedom in what they want the game to be. Also at this time was the development of Rell Games. Rell Games take on a Roblox One Piece game. The development of Rell severely stripped any time that Rell Games had to work on Shindo Life, and the game would see a little amount of updates. With the decrease in updates came lots of bugs that were left unfixed, and any time updates did happen, they were obviously rushed and were only made from the pressure of updating the game. So a lot of the time, they would just create even more bugs. The race update would be the last straw for me personally. This update added multiple races you could get that would give unique perks and a special ability to use. But the catch was that you had to be Z rank to get access to races, the highest rank in the game. Z rank takes well over 10 hours to get, and not a lot of people are up to that grind. Races were also unlocked through getting DNA strands from specific bosses. Every time you defeated a boss, you had a chance to get a DNA strand that would give you access to that boss's race. The only issue is that every time you spin a race, you have to get that race's DNA strand again before being able to access that race again. So you would have to consistently grind for DNA strands just to switch between races. And to make everything even worse, you had to use Rell coins to spin for races, a currency that was impossible to get without codes. And since the game was rarely being updated, there were barely any codes to use, so races were basically impossible to get without spending money. After this update, Rell Games would have one final update that would bring back a portion of the game's loyal fanbase, the Open World update. Open World is basically a roleplay game mode inside of Shinobi Life 2. The game mode garnered an extremely loyal fanbase and is the main reason the game hovers around 10,000 players to this day. That's the end of Shinobi Life 2 for now. The game is still very successful and has an extremely loyal player base, and even without updates, the game is doing much better than a big chunk of Roblox games right now. Currently Rell is the main focus of the Rell brothers, and we can't expect any major updates to Shinobi Life 2 anytime soon. But it's not like there is no hope for the game. Ninden is looking like a very high quality game that will stay on track as a Naruto game. In hindsight, Shinobi Life 2 was never going to be one of the titans of Roblox games for long. The quality of games has changed drastically over the lifespan of Shinobi Life 2, and the quality of Rell Games' work has improved as well. Just look at what Shinobi Life 2 looks like compared to Rell's. The improvements are like night and day, so to say the future is bright would be an understatement. And all we can really do is wait for what Ninden and Rell bring to Roblox.